Hi guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with our third episode of the meta recap. So in episode 2, we covered patch 2.0 and 2.0a. So today we're going to be doing patch 2.1 to 2.1b. And as usual, what this series is about and the explanation for what the series is and isn't is found in the first 4 to 5 minutes of episode 1. So it's up in the cards for you to refer to. Please at least watch the first 4 minutes of explaining what the series is, so that you guys know what this is all about. And also check out, of course, episodes 1 and 2 if you haven't already. So now we're on to our third episode. So now on screen, as usual, we have the what we left off at. So this is the graphic for 2.0a. So this was what the meta looked like in 2.0a for some context. But with that out of the way, we're going to jump into the video proper with patch 2.1. Okay, so patch 2.1 was released in February 2021. So now, this patch was a patch with a lot of features that got added and a lot of changes. So we're going to talk about those first before we actually jump into the actual meta changes. So first up, we have the release of Xayah and Rakan, the two lovers, and of course with that, the accompanying event where you could get one of them for free. And we also had the Lunar Beast event, also in conjunction with League PC. And we have the replay as well as the spectator feature added. So you will see clips in between patches from now on, because I can now put the clips from the respective meta from the time. So now let's move on to the actual changes. So first major change we gotta talk about is the Youmuu's nerf. So Youmuu's, when you stack up to 100, it used to give unhit magic damage for people who are not aware. However, after this patch, the only thing you get from reaching 100 stacks was the bonus movement speed, so you don't get the unhit magic damage anymore. So this was the patch that completely killed Jhin. So Jin's core items used to be GA into Youmuu's into Infinity Edge and so on, but GA got nerfed in patch 2.0a, and now in 2.1 Youmuu's got nerfed. So it is two big hits to Jhin, and Jhin completely fell out of the meta. He became from the best ADC to now what is probably like a B tier, C tier ADC, nowhere near the top. So that Youmuu's nerf killed Jhin, and the Youmuu's nerf technically hurt any lethality user like Zed and so on. And other than that, we got the Locket nerf. So last time what used to happen is Locket stacking, where the support takes Locket, the jungler takes Locket, sometimes even the top laner takes Locket, and there was no consequence, so you just lock it and lock it and lock it, and the whole team keeps getting shields, unlike both teams. So this was the patch where they nerf Locket stacking, where each successive Locket is only going to give 50% shield of the previous Locket. And at the start of the patch, people actually still tried to do Locket stacking before realizing it ain't worth it. So what happened instead was that it became one redemption and one Locket per team. So this was the patch where the redemption meta started, and it's still prevalent today. So today most supports still take redemption. So if you guys want to know, this is where it all began. So lots of changes there, but we're gonna get into the actual meta changes. So first up, actually Lulu and Orianna got hotfixed nerf on both of their ultimates. I believe the cooldown was increased, and if I'm not mistaken, but these, you know that a champion is really broken when Riot gives it a hotfix. Hotfixes in Wild Rift are really rare. I believe this is the first time a hotfix has occurred in Wild Rift, was the nerf to Lulu and Orianna halfway through patch 2.0a. However, as you guys can see from the graphic, Orianna is still the best or second best mid laner. Lulu is still the best support. So yeah, that basically tells you everything you need to know. Now, something that I want to just point out here is that even though I'm not putting Jinx on the ADC portion of the graphic, but Jinx Lulu actually this was the time where Jinx Lulu as a duo bot lane was very popular. So this was that time, in patch 2.1 was where it's really started to pick up. I didn't put it in the graphic, but I'm just saying it, I'm just putting it out there. So quite a few significant things happened over here. First up, you'll see that Kennen is gone from the Baron lane. What happened to Kennen? He got a nerf to his base movement speed, his W cooldown, his E damage, his EAP ratio, his ult damage, and his ult AP ratio. Essentially, he got completely gutted. From being like the best Baron laner, he is nowhere in the picture anymore. He's just gone. People thought that the nerfs were to make him more balanced and he would still be pretty viable, just not overpowered. But essentially, it gutted him and he was never in the top lane meta ever again since this day. So, Kennen's gone. In the jungle, Shyvana's also gone. So who is left over there? Baron lane and jungle is left with Olaf just left there, as Olaf being the meta. So Olaf at this point was at his peak. He was at the most overpowered because there was no Baron laner or no jungler that could really fight against Olaf. So Olaf was the best at these two roles. In mid lane, of course, Orianna got hotfixed. She's still up there. Aurelion Sol is still up there. He didn't actually get adjusted. But something I just want to point out is that this was the patch where Corki got the major buff to his Q80 ratio, his E shredding, and his ult damage. But he is not quite in the picture as of yet, as of this patch, even though he just got buffed. But spoiler alert, he's gonna be in the graphic for the next patch. So yeah. So in the bot lane, Miss Fortune is of course still there. And in the support, it's still Lulu and Alistar. The hotfix nerfs didn't really affect Lulu and Orianna at all. So this was what happened. This was the meta in patch 2.1. Okay, so now on to patch 2.1a. This was released in early March of 2021, of course. So, if you guys can see, there is huge changes in the Baron lane, in the jungle, and in everywhere, basically. So this patch killed a lot of people. So, before we get into the meta changes, we're gonna actually cover that Katarina was released on this patch. And other than that, we actually had the Blade of the Rune King nerf and the Liandry's Torment nerf. So, after the GA nerf, basically every AD carry was rushing Blade of the Rune King first, including Miss Fortune. So Miss Fortune, as you guys know from the previous patch, was the most meta AD carry. She was taking Blade of the Rune King first, which is not an item that is meant for Miss Fortune. Miss Fortune either goes for lethality, like Youmuu's kind of build. If not, she goes crit, which is like the Infinity Edge into crit build. But Blade of the Rune King isn't really a item that's meant for MF, but Blade of the Rune King was so broken as an item that basically everybody who could build it was building it, even Miss Fortune who wasn't suited for it, like melee top laners were building it. Basically whoever could build it would build it because of how strong it was. So this was the Blade of the Rune King. Now technically it's an adjustment because they did buff Blade of the Rune King for melee champions, so this was the adjustment that killed the Blade of the Rune King ADC meta. So Miss Fortune is gone. At the same time, Miss Fortune got nerfed. We'll cover that later. Liandry's got nerfed because every mid laner was rushing Liandry's. Aurelion Sol and Orianna was rushing Liandry's as their first item, and Liandry's as a whole was just doing way too much work for how little gold it cost. So basically the gold cost got increased, so it got nerfed, and the stats itself wasn't nerfed, but this gold cost increase did actually shake it up that Liandry's wouldn't be the first item for everybody from now on. So this was actually a good nerf. And yeah. So also something I want to point out is that this was the patch that Ezreal got his Q damage nerf reverted. So now Ezreal is nowhere in the graphic, and he is also not considered a top tier pick at the moment. However, later on, like in present day more or less, in like patch 2.2, 2.2a, 2.2b, onwards, Ezreal got back in the meta, and this played a part in it, which is Ezreal's Q nerf revert. So that's just what I'm going to point out here. Now, in the Baron lane and the jungle, of course there is the notable absence of Olaf. What happened to Olaf? He got nerfed, obviously. So Olaf got his base armor and base AD nerf, so he got a hit to his damage, a hit to his armor. His Q slow got a huge nerf, and also his slow duration had a huge nerf. Previously, what made Olaf so good was that he could just run in Q hit the enemy, slow them down, and nobody could run away from Olaf. If you tried to CC him, he popped his Ragnarok, ran you down, and even if you got him low, his lifesteal was so insane with his W that he just healed back up, and if you kind of one-shot the Olaf is gonna kill you. So this nerf actually most people thought it wouldn't be too bad at the start of the patch, but by the end of the patch, everybody realized that Olaf was not meta anymore at all, because the fact that he got less armor and less AD means he took more damage while dealing less damage, and his Q slow duration nerf and his Q slow nerf meant that he couldn't run people down as easily. So make no mistake, Olaf is still alright as a champion even up till today, but the traits that made him overpowered wasn't there anymore, so he was not the best jungler and not the best Baron laner anymore. So I have, of course, mentioned in the very first episode that Malphite is always up there in the Baron lane. So who became the best Baron laner? Malphite became the best Baron laner. So Malphite was, of course, really good, especially when Miss Fortune was meta, where Miss Fortune, of course, could ult the Malphite, as you guys have seen in the... sorry, not Miss Fortune ult the Malphite. Malphite ults the enemies, and Miss Fortune ults the enemies that Malphite has ulted. What am I talking about? So that was the wombo combo. Of course, there's so many wombo combos with Miss Fortune. So yeah, and in the jungle, with the absence of Olaf, Shyvana and Lee Sin are back in the picture, of course. And in the mid lane, actually, honestly, the changes were not huge. No changes, actually, except for the addition of Corki. Now, why is Corki suddenly in the mid lane when he got buffed the previous patch? That's because people took time to actually realize Corki was good. So, in the previous patch, because Corki couldn't wave clear and couldn't roam very easily, people didn't think that he could be very good into Orianna and Aurelion Sol. However, Corki is especially good into Aurelion Sol. The reason why Orianna is good into Aurelion Sol is because she can wave clear as fast as him and match his roams. However, the reason why Corki is good into Aurelion Sol is because when Aurelion Sol clears lane and roams, Corki is just left by himself in the lane with no pressure. He can slowly farm up the minion wave, slowly just chip away on the tower and just scale up to the late game. The bad part about Corki is his weak early game, but without an enemy mid laner there to pressure him, he can actually freely just scale up, and his entire weakness of his early game is just gone because no one is there to kill him unless the jungler ganks. But basically that is why Corki is so good in this roaming mid lane meta. So now, in the ADC role, as you guys can see, this was where Miss Fortune got nerfed. So Miss Fortune got a hit to her, basically all her base stats, and she got the nerf to her passive where it does only 50% damage onto minions. So that, of course, is horrible, obviously. So Miss Fortune just basically just left the meta from then on. So who became meta? Kai'Sa was always good, as I've said at the start of the first episode as well, but Xayah got a buff to all her abilities. So on release, Xayah was very underwhelming. She didn't have crit scaling like in the PC version. She was very underwhelming. She got a buff to literally every single ability. Too many changes to list, but basically they hyper buffed her and she became great. So now, at this point in time, there was a debate on whether Kai'Sa or Xayah was the best ADC. Many people thought Xayah was the best ADC, me included. But turns out that that was mainly because most people didn't respect her root. But nowadays, most people do. So in current day, Kai'Sa is better than Xayah. But when Xayah first got buffed, Xayah was probably the best ADC just because majority of people, even in high elo, didn't respect her feathers and didn't respect her root. So Xayah was getting off a lot of kills that she shouldn't have been. And of course, in the debate as well, as I've mentioned, Kai'Sa didn't actually receive any changes, but Kai'Sa has always been meta ever since her release. So Kai'Sa was seen as one of the two best ADCs at this point in time. In the support role, as you guys can see, Lulu is gone. So Lulu got nerfed a lot of nerfs, but the most notable, I'm just going to point out the most notable of her nerfs. So the most notable is the polymorph duration nerf, as well as the shield duration on her E. So on her E, her shield lasts for less than half the time now, so you have to use your E at a really appropriate time, which makes her really a lot hard to play. Then the range on her Q, sorry, not her Q, the range on her E and her ultimate also got nerfed. So to buff up your allies, you have to move closer to the danger area. So these collective nerfs just essentially kicked Lulu out of the meta from then on up till now, current day, which is patch 2.3. Lulu is still not in the meta, so these nerfs, kicked Lulu out of the meta well and good. So this was the what happened in the meta for patch 2.1a. Now we're gonna move on to patch 2.1b. Alright, so now on to patch 2.1b. This was released in mid-March 2021, and this was the patch where the Targon champions were released. That is Pantheon, Diana, and as well as Leona. So, on release, all three of them were pretty weak, but there was an accompanying event where you could choose which aspect you wanted, and after that you could get that respective champion for free. Now, this was the patch that the locket price increased from 500 gold to 800 gold. So now, at this point in time, redemption meta was already coming to the picture, as I've mentioned. However, some people were still trying to go for locket stacking, or going for locket early, that kind of thing. So this was the patch that really killed that. So locket is nerfed even further. Now we're gonna move on to the actual meta itself. Baron lane, Malphite's still there, no changes. In the jungle, Lee Sin is now back to being seen as the best jungler. And pretty much from here on out, he has always stayed in the jungle meta. He never leaves the jungle meta from now on, at least up till current day, which is patch 2.3. And Shyvana is not seen as good anymore, so she's sort of become lower tier. Last time it was seen that her and Lee Sin was like the same tier, but not anymore. Now Evelynn is actually up and coming. She hasn't actually reached the Lee Sin level yet, but she's gonna reach there soon. But people are starting to play a bit more of Evelynn on this patch. And in the mid lane, the most obvious change, Corki and Aurelion Sol is gone. Corki, of course, was a good matchup to Aurelion Sol, so if Aurelion Sol leaving the meta, Corki is sort of not as good anymore as well. Now, take note, of course, I've mentioned previously as well, Corki is always sort of in the mid lane meta, always one of the top champions, but as of now, he is just like slightly below Orianna and not really the meta-defining champion of this patch. It's still Orianna who has not been nerfed yet. So what happened here is that Aurelion Sol's passive, which technically is those stars spinning around him, and his W, which is the one that expands his stars, got a huge damage nerf. And his ult cooldown also got a nerf. So as usual, everybody thought it would be fine, but honestly, the nerf was enough to hit him hard, and his damage was suffering quite a bit. So he basically left the meta, now leaving Orianna as the best mid laner. In the AD carry and in the support roles, there was honestly no changes this patch. So it's still Xayah, Kai'Sa, and it's still Alistar. So honestly, this patch, not too many changes, just mainly a mid lane change. But that is it for episode 3 of the meta recap. See you guys in the next episode. Episode 4 will be covering patch 2.2 all the way to 2.2c. So thank you guys for watching the video. And if you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching the video, guys, and goodbye.